Howdy, how's it going? It's Davvy Chappy, and today I'm going to be giving a brief overview of each of the classes in 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons. So for anybody who's new to the game or looking to get into it, hopefully this will help you figure out which class you might want to try out first. A few things I want to point out is that, with the exception of the Ranger, all the classes are pretty balanced to each other, and I'm going in alphabetical order, not in order of how good I think a class is or how fun it is. Also, do keep in mind that most of this is just my opinion, so please understand that I am not an apotheosis of knowledge, and you are allowed to have a different opinion than mine. So with that being said, let's begin. Right, so to begin with, we have the Barbarian. This is about as basic of a class as you can have, and that's not really a bad thing. The Barbarian is incredibly easy to play, as most of its features have to do with its rage mode, which lets it do a myriad of things, from becoming super tough to doing more damage on crits, to potentially just taking into the air and flying off of nothing but pure anger. You essentially become a walking figure of pain and death, because you're so angry that you've literally scared away the laws of physics, and now the world bends to your will because they don't want to be the next thing that you hit for 40-12 damage. Also, they don't have to wear any armor, so you can be Conan. So, disclaimer, the Bard is personally my favorite class, so my bias towards it's gonna shine here. The Bard is one of the two main skill-focused classes in the game, with the other being the Rogue, and it strives to be a jack-of-all-trades character. It even has the ability called Jack-of-all-trades, which just flat-out makes you better at all of your skills. You want to use a sword? There's a path for that. You want magic? There's a path for that. Add on to that the fact that it can potentially learn any spell in the game, and you basically have a class that went from jack-of-all-trades to anything you can do, I can do better. Now, with that being said, I actually don't recommend it for new players at all. Magic classes, by default, are tedious and annoying to write everything down for, and I've seen new players whose experiences were practically ruined just by the upkeep required from keeping track of all their spells, while also trying to learn all the other mechanics of the game. I say, play a game or two with a different class, then branch off into the magic classes once you figured everything out.
O Lord, forgive those who look upon the cleric and see nothing but a heal-bot, for they do not know of the raw, undiluted can of whoop-ass they speak of. Guide their paths as they see the cleric in all of its holy, concentration-obsessed glory, and pray that the cleric grants pardon upon them as they cross paths. Amen.
No, but seriously, the Cleric is an absolute monster in every regard. If the Bard was a jack-of-all-trades, the Cleric takes a single path and runs to the finish line with it. Depending on which god you've chosen to serve, you can be a War Cleric and kick ass for the Lord, you can be a Light Cleric and treat every day like it's the Salem Witch Trials, or you can be a Life Cleric and prevent everybody from dying just because you said so, and so many other things. Now, again, like the Bard and like every other main spellcaster on this list, the Cleric, for all its glory, is hell to keep notes for, and new players will find it difficult to keep up. I'd suggest coming back to this class after you've got a good understanding of the rules. You remember the Cleric? Yeah, well, take that, but replace everything that I said about gods and replace it with bears, and what you get is a homeless Santa Claus that treats the naughty and nice kids the same way by strangling them with the vines. The Druid and the Cleric actually do a lot of the same stuff, but obviously with a more religious flavor for the Cleric and more of an elderberry flavor for the Druid. The main difference is that Druids rely a little bit more on summoning and using nature around them, and they are more likely to shapeshift into things like bears, eagles, bears, wolves, or huge fuck-off bears. Again, don't play this if you're new, but try it out once you learn the game. So, a lot of people compare the Barbarian and the Fighter due to the overlap in party composition, and I've seen that more people prefer the Barbarian because it seems more straightforward. Now, while that's true, that doesn't make the Fighter bad. It doesn't have any final forms that it can shift into, and it can't yell so loudly that it lifts off the ground and flies away, but that's because the Fighter doesn't fight harder, it fights smarter. A lot of its abilities focus on using maneuvers to open up weaknesses in your opponent, and keeping itself sustainable so that it can fight for a long time, rather than blasting all of its limited use abilities right away. Not to mention the fact that the Fighter can gain more feats than pretty much anybody else in the game, and you have a martial character that can fight however you want it to, and do it for a really long time. It's also very easy to play, but still has a lot of room to master its abilities, so anybody looking for something they can take their time learning the ins and outs of will appreciate the Fighter. The Monk fills that niche that everybody has but nobody wants to mention, and that's the niche of black belt in karate, judo, flip chop, board cutting, drunken bastard of a fighter. That being said, the Monk is actually pretty fun. It has a pool of key points which you can use to do a bunch of different things depending on what path you take for your Monk, from mock punching things to grabbing arrows out of the air and throwing them back to disappearing into shadows like a ninja. The Monk has a lot of versatility for people that want to be good at fighting, but don't think that using traditional weaponry is a good idea. Also, they don't have to wear armor either, so have fun playing somebody's naked grandfather who is also a kung fu master. Hey kids, did you want to play a Cleric but you also wanted to heed my warning about not playing a spellcaster for your first time? Then do I have the compromise for you. The Paladin's basically a mix between the Cleric and the Fighter, and while it doesn't do either of those roles as well as the others do, it still has a few useful tricks up its sleeve that at least let it keep up with the rest of the party. Now, Now, the reason why I suggest this class for new people is because despite it having magic, it isn't a full caster. It's what's called a half caster, meaning it doesn't start out with spells at level 1, and the spells that it does learn later on will be fairly limited, giving you a little while to learn the core game mechanics before the spells come in, but even then you won't be overwhelmed by them. But that's okay, because the spells are only meant to accent the main fighting power of the Paladin, not replace it entirely. Its real power is its ability to be an off healer, a tank, a damage dealer, and a buff provider all in one stainless steel Pringles can. If you're looking to discover magic and you think that the main spellcasters are too intimidating, then you might want to consider playing this class. Okay, so this is the part where people are definitely going to have mixed reactions about what I have to say, but I don't think anyone should play the Ranger as it is now. Like, all of its abilities are nerfed versions of what other classes can do better, and its biggest draw, the favored terrain ability, only works in one specific terrain that you chose, meaning if you chose forest and the campaign takes place in a city, or underground, or underwater, or in space, or in the octagon, you're just shit out of luck. That's its main ability, and none of the other ones really make up for it. Case in point, I've had 3 people play Rangers in my campaigns, and all of them felt weak compared to everybody else, and they had to find their own ways to make up for it. One multiclassed into a rogue, another into a fighter, and the third just got sad because he thought that the class would get better, but it never really did. With that being said, there is a slight saving grace in the form of the unearthed arcana known as the Ranger Revised. It adds a lot of buffs and tweaks onto the Ranger to make it stand with the rest of the big boys, and if you're thinking of playing a Ranger, I highly recommend asking your DM if you can use the revised version. It's sort of a deal breaker. Right, so, moving away from the dreariness, we have the Rogue. Where the Bard tries to generalize his talents, the Rogue takes a handful of skills and becomes a master at them, giving him major bonuses to whichever skills you choose. In addition, the Rogue can go down paths that either increase his skill set even further, or you could turn into a serial killer, or you could get gifted with limited magic, who knows. In addition, the Rogue is able to move faster and dodge things that the other classes normally would have a harder time with, making you very difficult to pin down compared to others. Coupled with the sneak attack damage that gets bigger as you level up, you've got a character that's easy to start with, then expands on the rules as time goes on to make itself even better. So, to round this out, I'm gonna group up the last 3 classes together into one description, and the reason for that is because they all do a lot of the same things, just in different ways, and these ways are representative of how they got their magical power. And I'm gonna start by saying that these classes are all pretty complicated, being magic casters and all, so if you're new, you might just want to hold off on them until you've gotten the hang of the game.
Especially the Wizard.
So, with that out of the way, let me explain. The Sorcerer, Warlock, and the Wizard are all the 3 major arcane classes that can use their magic to do pretty much whatever the hell they want. They can shoot fire, create houses, summon things, and do pretty much whatever else you can think of. There really is no limit to their power outside of how many times you can cast certain types of spells at a time. Now, the Sorcerer does this because for whatever reason, they were blessed with the innate ability to cast magic, whether they were born with it or they came across the ability later in life. This allows them to mold and alter their spells in ways the other classes can't, such as by making their range longer or making them hit only certain targets in an area. The Warlock made a pact with a magical being, be it a demon, a fairy, or fucking Cthulhu himself, and that being gave the Warlock a fraction of its power. Now, since the Warlock wasn't meant to have this power, they can't control it nearly as well as the other spellcasters, meaning they can only cast spells at their highest possible power. Think of, instead of a faucet where you can control the amount of water, it's a garden hose. They also get a bunch of buffs that stick with them, letting them see in the dark, giving them magical armor, and other really cool shit. Now, the Wizard took a different path. They weren't born with magic, and they haven't been talking with Nyarlathotep, so they spend their lives studying how magic works, and because of this, they can potentially learn every spell that a wizard is capable of learning, turning them into a Swiss Army knife of magical MacGuffin power, as well as giving them other cool, unique things depending on the field of magic they chose to study. But with great power comes great responsibility, and remembering all of these spells can be an absolute chore. For this reason, I really don't suggest the Sorcerer, I definitely don't suggest the Wizard,
Especially the Wizard.
and I only tentatively suggest the Warlock for first-time players. Don't get me wrong, they're fun classes, they're just complicated. And that'll do it. I hope that this video helped anybody out who is still on the fence about which class they might want to play as a first-time player, and if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and maybe subscribe if you want to be a really cool dude. But yeah, Davvy out.